The plate shattered against the wall, missing Clara's head by inches. She flinched, her hands trembling as she gathered the shards from the saloon floor. The smell of whiskey and cigar smoke burned her lungs, making each breath shallow and painful. "You clumsy fool!" Silas Garrett, the saloon owner, loomed over her, his meaty fist raised. "That's coming out of your wages, all of it." Clara's fingers bled as she picked up the broken porcelain, her vision blurring with unshed tears. There would be no wages this week, again, which meant no food, no medicine for the cough that had settled deep in her chest. She'd been working at Garrett's saloon in Redemption Creek for 3 months, ever since her father died and left her with nothing but debt. Garrett had promised fair work for fair pay, but his promises were as empty as her stomach. Before we continue with Clara's story, I want to ask you something important. If you're enjoying this tale, please take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and leave a like on this video. It truly means everything to us and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. Also, I'd love to know, where are you listening from right now? Are you at home, traveling, or maybe working? Let me know in the comments. "I want you gone by morning," Garrett spat, turning away. "You're more trouble than you're worth." Clara's heart plummeted. Gone? Where would she go? She had no family, no friends in this dusty Montana town. The boarding house wouldn't let her stay without payment. Her hand instinctively moved to the thin gold chain around her neck. Her mother's locket, the only thing of value she possessed, the only thing she had left of home. That night, Clara stood outside the general store, the locket clutched in her trembling palm. The autumn wind cut through her threadbare dress, and she couldn't stop shivering. The cough rattled in her chest, each breath a struggle. She'd walked the entire town, desperate, but no one would hire a woman with no references and a reputation for carelessness that Garrett had poisoned throughout Redemption Creek. "Please," she whispered to Mr. Henderson, the shopkeeper, as he prepared to close, "I just need enough for a room tonight and some bread. This locket, it's real gold. It's worth more than—" "I don't want your jewelry, miss." Henderson's voice wasn't unkind, but it was final. "I've got no use for it, and I can't have Garrett thinking I'm helping you. Bad for business. I'm sorry." The door closed. The lock clicked. Clara sank onto the wooden steps, her chest tightening. The panic she'd been fighting all day finally crashed over her like a wave. Her breathing came in short, desperate gasps. The world spun. Black spots danced across her vision. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't breathe. "Miss?" A deep voice, gentle but commanding, cut through the roaring in her ears. "Miss, look at me." Strong hands gripped her shoulders, not rough like Garrett's, but steady, grounding. Clara forced her eyes open and found herself staring into the most intense hazel eyes she'd ever seen. The man kneeling before her had sun-bronzed skin, dark hair that brushed his collar, and a jaw sharp enough to cut glass. A scar traced from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone, giving him a dangerous edge, but his expression held only concern. "I can't breathe," Clara gasped, her hands clutching at her chest. The panic attack had her in its grip, squeezing tighter and tighter. The man moved closer, his large hands framing her face with surprising gentleness. "Breathe through me, darling," he whispered, his voice low and calm. "You're stronger than you think. Watch me. In through your nose." He demonstrated, breathing in slowly, deeply, His thumb stroked her cheeks, wiping away tears she hadn't realized were falling. Now out through your mouth. Slow. That's it. You're doing fine. Again, in through your nose. Clara tried to mirror him, her eyes locked on his. There was something ancient and knowing in that gaze, something that made her believe him when he said she was strong. Gradually, painfully, her breathing steadied. The tightness in her chest eased. The world stopped spinning. "Good girl," he murmured, a hint of a smile touching his lips. "There you are." She became aware of how close they were, how his hands still cradled her face, how his warmth chased away the evening chill. She pulled back slightly, embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Nothing to apologize for." He stood, offering his hand. "I'm Daniel Thornwood. I own the ranch north of town." Clara knew the name. Everyone did. Thornwood Ranch was one of the largest spreads in Montana Territory. Thousands of acres of prime grazing land. Daniel Thornwood was a legend, a man who'd built his empire from nothing, who treated his cattle and horses with more respect than most men treated their wives. "Clara Ashford," she whispered, taking his hand. His grip was firm, calloused from hard work, and he pulled her up effortlessly. She swayed slightly, and his other hand went to her waist, steadying her. "When did you last eat, Miss Ashford?" The question, asked so gently, nearly broke her. "Yesterday morning." His jaw tightened. "And tonight, where are you staying?" I don't know." His eyes dropped to the locket, still clutched in her other hand. "Were you trying to sell that?" She nodded, shame burning her cheeks. "It's all I have, but Mr. Henderson won't." "Gold isn't what we need here. You are." Daniel's voice was firm, decisive. "I'm short a cook at the ranch. My housekeeper, Martha, broke her hip last week and went to live with her daughter in Denver. The hands are ready to mutiny if they have to eat my attempt at stew one more time." Clara blinked. "You're offering me a job? Room, board, and fair wages. Can you cook?" "Yes, but then the job's yours if you want it." He released her waist, but didn't step back. "I won't lie to you. It's hard work. The hands eat 3 times a day, and there's always mending, cleaning. But you'll have your own room in the main house, 3 meals a day, and I pay on time. Every time." It was too good to be true. Men didn't make offers like this without expecting something in return. Clara had learned that lesson the hard way. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Daniel's expression softened. "An honest day's work for an honest day's pay. Nothing more. You'll have a lock on your door, and any man who disrespects you answers to me. That includes me." The sincerity in his voice made her chest ache. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me. I know you're willing to sell your mother's locket to survive. I know you've got enough pride left to be standing here asking for help instead of stealing. That's enough." He tilted his head toward the livery stable. "I've got my horse here. We can be at the ranch in an hour. Martha left most of her things. You can use whatever you need until you get your feet under you." Clara looked down at the locket in her palm, then back up at Daniel Thornwood. Every instinct screamed that this was dangerous, that men like him didn't exist, that there had to be a catch. But she was out of options, out of time, and out of hope. "All right," she whispered. "I'll come." The ride to Thornwood Ranch passed in a blur. Clara sat in front of Daniel on his massive black stallion, her body rigid with exhaustion and weariness. His arm around her waist was the only thing keeping her upright, and despite her suspicions, she found herself leaning back against his solid chest. He was warm, and she was so cold. Sleep if you need to, he murmured against her ear. I've got you. She did sleep, for the first time in days without fear. The ranch appeared as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was bigger than Clara had imagined. A sprawling two-story main house with a wraparound porch, several bunkhouses, a massive barn, and corrals that seemed to stretch forever. Cattle dotted the distant hills, and the sound of horses nickering carried on the evening breeze. Daniel dismounted and lifted Clara down as if she weighed nothing. Her legs nearly buckled, and again, his hands steadied her. You're dead on your feet, he observed. Food first, then bed. The hands can wait until tomorrow for a proper meal. He guided her into the house, one hand at the small of her back. The interior was surprisingly refined. Polished wood floors, sturdy furniture that looked handmade, and curtains that actually matched. It was a home, not just a house. In the kitchen, Daniel moved with efficient purpose, assembling a simple meal of bread, cheese, cold chicken, and apple slices. He set the plate in front of her and poured a glass of milk. Eat slowly, he instructed, sitting across from her. You'll make yourself sick otherwise. Clara forced herself to follow his advice, even though she wanted to devour everything in sight. The food was simple, but tasted like heaven. Daniel watched her with an unreadable expression, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. The bedroom's upstairs, second door on the right, he said when she'd finished. There's a wash basin and clean linens. I'll be in the room at the end of the hall if you need anything. Breakfast is at 5, earlier if you're up for it. The hands eat at 6. Where will you sleep? Clara asked, then immediately regretted the question. It sounded too familiar. Same place I always sleep, my room. He stood, carrying the dishes to the sink. You'll have privacy, Miss Ashford. I meant what I said earlier. That night, Clara lay in a real bed for the first time in months, clean sheets against her skin and a full stomach. She stared at the ceiling, waiting for the catch, for the door to open, for the nightmare to begin. It never did. She woke before dawn to the sound of men's voices and horses moving in the yard below. Panic seized her. She'd overslept. She'd be late, until she saw pale sunlight just beginning to streak across the horizon. 4:30. She had time. The kitchen was still dark when she entered it. But Clara didn't need light to work. She'd been cooking since she was 8 years old, first for her invalid mother, then for her father, then for the ungrateful patrons of Garrett's saloon. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, building a fire in the stove, finding flour and eggs and bacon in the well-stocked pantry. By the time Daniel came downstairs at 5:15, the kitchen smelled of fresh coffee, biscuits, and frying bacon. He stopped in the doorway, surprise flickering across his face. You didn't have to start this early, he said. I wanted to. Clara flipped the bacon with a fork she'd found. Where do the hands eat? Long table in the bunkhouse. Usually I carry everything over, but I'll do it. She'd already spotted the large serving platters in the cabinet. How many men? 12 right now. It'll be more come spring. Clara did the math in her head, adding more biscuits to the pan. They'll need gravy and eggs, scrambled or fried. Scrambled. Less complaining. Daniel moved to the coffee pot, pouring 2 cups. He handed one to Clara, their fingers brushing. You're efficient. I've had practice. She took a grateful sip. The coffee was strong, hot, and perfect. Thank you. For this. For everything. Thank me after you've met the hands, Daniel said dryly. They're good men, but rough around the edges. They might test you at first. I can handle rough men, Mr. Thornwood. Daniel, he corrected. Mr. Thornwood was my father, and he's been dead 15 years. Clara nodded, focusing on the stove. Something about the way he said his father's name told her there was pain there, old and deep. She recognized it, because she carried her own. At 6 o'clock sharp, Daniel helped her carry platters of food to the bunkhouse. The men inside went silent when they saw Clara. 12 pairs of eyes assessing her with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. They were a mix of ages and backgrounds. Young cowboys barely out of boyhood, grizzled veterans with weathered faces, and everything in between. "This is Miss Clara Ashford," Daniel announced, his voice carrying easy authority. "She's our new cook. You'll treat her with respect, or you'll answer to me. Clear?" A chorus of "yes, sir," and "yes, boss" followed. "Now eat before it gets cold," Clara said, her voice steadier than she felt. "And if anyone has complaints, save them for after you've tried the food." That earned a few chuckles and broke the tension. The men dug in with the enthusiasm of men who'd been cooking for themselves, and the initial suspicion gave way to appreciation as they tasted her biscuits and gravy. "Ma'am," one of the younger cowboys said, his mouth still half full, "if you can cook like this every day, you're gonna be the most popular person on this ranch." "More popular than me?" Daniel asked, raising an eyebrow. "Well, boss, you don't make gravy like this." More laughter. Clara felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. Maybe this could work. Maybe she could have a place here. The days fell into a rhythm. Clara woke before dawn, prepared 3 meals a day for hungry ranch hands, and kept the main house clean. The work was hard, harder than the saloon in some ways, but it was honest. No one grabbed her, no one shouted at her, and no one withheld her wages. Daniel was a constant, quiet presence. He worked alongside his men, mending fences, breaking horses, checking on cattle. He came in dusty and exhausted each evening, but he always thanked Clara for the meal, always asked if she needed anything. He treated her like a person, not property, and that small kindness was revolutionary. 3 weeks into her time at Thornwood Ranch, one of the horses got spooked and kicked Daniel in the ribs. Clara heard the commotion from the kitchen and ran out to find him on the ground, his face white with pain, blood seeping through his shirt. "Get him inside," she ordered the hands, her voice sharp with command. "Someone ride for the doctor, now." They carried Daniel into the house and laid him on the sofa. Clara sent the men away, despite their protests, then carefully unbuttoned his shirt. The wound wasn't deep, but it was ugly. A gash along his left side that would need stitches. His ribs were already bruising, purple-black against his tanned skin. "I'm fine," Daniel gritted out. "It's just a scratch." "It's not a scratch," Clara said firmly. She gathered clean cloths and hot water, her hands steady despite her racing heart. "The doctor won't be here for at least an hour. I'm going to clean this and bind your ribs. It's going to hurt. I've had worse." She believed him. His torso was a map of old scars, a bullet wound below his right shoulder, what looked like a knife slash across his abdomen, burn marks on his left forearm. This man had lived a hard life, fought hard battles. Clara worked quickly, efficiently, cleaning the wound with steady hands. Daniel didn't flinch, though she saw his jaw tighten, his knuckles white where he gripped the sofa cushion. "Where did you learn to do this?" he asked, his voice strained. "My father was a soldier. He taught me field medicine." She threaded a needle with practiced ease. "This is going to hurt worse than the cleaning. Do what you need to do." She stitched the wound closed with small, neat stitches, murmuring apologies each time the needle pierced his skin. When she finished, she bound his ribs tightly with strips of clean linen, her hands brushing against the hard planes of his stomach, the solid muscle of his chest. She tried not to notice how warm his skin was, how his breath caught when her fingers grazed his ribs. "There," she said, tying off the bandage. "The doctor can check it when he arrives, but you should heal fine if you don't do anything stupid." Daniel caught her hand before she could pull away. His thumb traced the calluses on her palm, the small scars from years of kitchen work. "Thank you," he said softly. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did." Clara met his eyes, finding something there that made her breath catch. "You saved me. This is nothing compared to that." "I didn't save you, Clara. I just gave you the opportunity to save yourself." The doctor arrived an hour later, examined Daniel's wound, and declared Clara's work better than most field surgeons I've seen. He left instructions for care and a bottle of laudanum for the pain, which Daniel refused to take. "Makes me slow," he muttered. "Can't afford slow with spring roundup coming." "You can't work with broken ribs," Clara argued. "Cracked, not broken. There's a difference. You're impossible." "So I've been told." Despite his protests, Daniel stayed in the house for the next 3 days, directing operations from the porch and clearly going stir-crazy. Clara brought him meals, changed his bandages, and ignored his grumbling about being coddled. On the 4th day, she came out to the porch with his lunch and found him trying to saddle his horse. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded. "Going to check the northern pasture. You've got cracked ribs that aren't fully healed. Get back in the house." Daniel turned to face her, a mixture of frustration and amusement in his eyes. "Are you giving me orders, Miss Ashford?" "Someone has to," she shot back. "Your men think you walk on water, so they won't." "I'm the only one here with enough sense to tell you you're being an idiot." For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then he started laughing, which turned into a wince as his ribs protested. "See," Clara said, gentler now, "you're hurt. I'm not good at sitting still." "I've noticed." She took his arm, guiding him back to the porch chair. "So don't sit still. Sit here and tell me about the ranch, about how you built all this." It was the first time she'd asked him anything personal, and something shifted in his expression. He settled into the chair, and Clara sat on the porch steps, her skirts pooled around her. "I was 18 when I came here," Daniel began. "Had $50 to my name and a horse I'd won in a card game. This land was nothing but sagebrush and rocks. Everyone thought I was crazy. What changed? Hard work, luck, and a refusal to quit, even when it would have been smarter." He stared out at the land he'd built. "I lost everything twice before it finally took. Nearly starved that first winter. But I couldn't go back." "Back where?" Clara asked quietly. "Boston." The word was bitter on his tongue. "My father was a banker, wanted me to follow in his footsteps. We disagreed, violently." The scar on his face suddenly made more sense. "He did that to you?" And worse, Daniel's hand unconsciously went to his ribs, as if remembering older injuries. "I left the night I turned 18 and never looked back. Built this place to prove I could make something of myself without his money or his name." "You did more than that," Clara said. "You built something good, something worth protecting." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Tell me about you," he said. "How did you end up in Redemption Creek?" So she told him about her father's death, the debts he'd left, Silas Garrett's false promises, about the months of barely surviving, of going to bed hungry, of dodging grabbing hands and cruel words. She told him things she'd never told anyone, and he listened without judgment, without pity. "You're stronger than you think," Daniel said when she finished, echoing his words from that first night. "Most people would have broken. I almost did. If you hadn't—" She trailed off, unable to finish. "But you didn't break. That's what matters." The days grew shorter as autumn deepened into winter. Daniel healed, returning to his work with the stubborn determination Clara had come to expect from him. She settled into life at the ranch, finding a peace she hadn't known since her mother died. The hands accepted her completely now, bringing her their mending, asking for her advice on everything from cooking to courtship. She became the heart of the ranch, the one constant in their hard lives. But it was Daniel who occupied her thoughts late at night when the house was quiet and sleep wouldn't come. Daniel who treated her with respect but kept a careful distance. Daniel whose eyes followed her when he thought she wasn't looking. Daniel who made her heart race with just a smile. Winter arrived with a vengeance, covering the ranch in snow and ice. The work became harder, more dangerous. Cattle needed constant care to survive the brutal cold, and the men worked from before dawn until after dark. One night in late December, a blizzard descended with terrifying speed. Daniel was out checking on the cattle in the far pasture and hadn't returned. By midnight, Clara was pacing the kitchen, her worry mounting with each passing minute. When the door finally burst open, Daniel stumbled in, covered in snow and ice, his lips blue with cold. Clara rushed to him, helping him out of his frozen coat. "You're freezing," she said, guiding him toward the fire. "We need to get you warm." "The cattle," he mumbled through chattering teeth. "Got them to the south barn. Should be safe." "Never mind the cattle. You nearly froze to death." She pushed him into a chair and began pulling off his boots. His feet were like ice, even through his socks. "We need to warm you slowly. Too fast, Will." "I know." He tried to stand. "I'll just—" His legs gave out. Clara caught him, struggling under his weight, and helped him to the sofa. She built up the fire, then wrapped him in every blanket she could find. He was shaking violently, and she knew the real danger was just beginning. Severe cold could kill even after you thought you were safe. Without thinking, Clara climbed under the blankets with him, pressing her body against his to share her warmth. He was so cold it hurt to touch him, but she held on, rubbing his arms, his back, trying to force heat back into his frozen muscles. "Clara," he mumbled, "you don't have to—" "Hush," she ordered. "Just let me help you." Gradually, slowly, his shaking subsided. Color returned to his lips. His breathing deepened, evened out. But Clara didn't move. She stayed curled against him, listening to his heartbeat, feeling his warmth returning. "Thank you," Daniel whispered, his arms tightening around her. "You're welcome." They stayed like that through the night, holding each other as the blizzard raged outside. And somewhere in those quiet hours, the careful distance they'd maintained crumbled completely. When Clara woke, it was to find Daniel watching her, his hazel eyes warm in the firelight. "I should go," she whispered, suddenly aware of how intimate this was. "The hands will need breakfast." "Clara." His hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing her lower lip. "Can I kiss you?" Her heart stuttered. "Yes." He kissed her softly, gently, as if she were something precious. Clara's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and the kiss deepened. It was everything she'd imagined, and nothing like she'd expected. Tender and passionate, patient and desperate, all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard. Daniel pressed his forehead to hers. "I've wanted to do that since the day I met you," he confessed. "Why didn't you?" "Because you deserved time, space, a choice." He pulled back slightly, his expression serious. "You still do. If you want this to stop right now, it stops. No consequences, no hard feelings. You'll still have your job, your room, everything I promised." Clara's eyes burned with tears. "You're not property, you're a person," she whispered, echoing words he'd never said, but had shown her every day. "No one's ever treated me like that before." Then they were fools. He kissed her again, softer this time. "You're extraordinary, Clara Ashford. I see a woman worth saving, worth fighting for, worth keeping." "I'm not good at this," she admitted. "At letting people close, at trusting. Neither am I." He smiled, that rare smile that transformed his face. "We'll figure it out together." Together, that word, so simple, so powerful. It meant she wasn't alone anymore. Neither was he. Spring came slowly that year, the snow melting in patches to reveal new grass beneath. The ranch woke from its winter sleep, and with it came new challenges. Calving season was brutal, demanding every hand's attention. Clara barely saw Daniel except at meals, but each morning she found small gifts. Wildflowers on her pillow, a smooth river stone, a carved wooden horse, no bigger than her thumb. "Where did you find time to make this?" she asked one morning, holding the tiny horse. "Made it in the bunkhouse at night," Daniel admitted. "Couldn't sleep, thinking about you." Their relationship was no secret on the ranch. The hands treated Clara with even more respect once they understood she was Daniel's, and Daniel made it clear that his respect for her hadn't changed. She still ran the kitchen, still made decisions about the household, still spoke her mind. If anything, he valued her opinions more, asking her advice on everything from new equipment to hiring decisions. But their happiness was fragile, and Clara knew it couldn't last. The trouble arrived on a hot day in May, when a stranger rode up to the ranch demanding to see Clara. She recognized him immediately. Frank Garrett, Silas's nephew, a man even crueler than his uncle. "There you are," Frank drawled, his eyes raking over Clara with obvious intent. "Uncle Silas has been looking for you. You left owing him money." "I owed him nothing," Clara said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I worked for 3 months without pay." "That's not how he tells it. Says you stole from him." Frank grinned, showing yellowed teeth. "I'm here to bring you back to settle your debts." Daniel appeared from the barn, his expression dark. "Miss Ashford isn't going anywhere. This doesn't concern you, Thornwood. Everything that happens on my land concerns me, and Clara lives here now, under my protection." Frank's hand drifted to his gun. "You willing to die for a saloon girl?" The world seemed to hold its breath. Clara stepped forward, putting herself between the men. "Don't," she said to Daniel. "He's not worth it." "She's right," Frank said. "I'm not worth it. But the 20 men I've got waiting in town, they might be. Uncle Silas wants his property back. One way or another, you're coming, girl." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Give us a moment." He pulled Clara aside, his hands gripping her shoulders. "I won't let them take you." "Daniel, 20 men. I don't care if it's 100. You're not going back there." His voice was fierce, absolute, "But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Clara nodded, even though her heart was pounding. Daniel turned back to Frank. Here's what's going to happen. Clara stays here. I'll send word to the marshal in Helena about your uncle's little debt collection scheme. I'm sure he'll be interested in how Silas treats his employees. In the meantime, any man who rides onto my land looking for trouble will get it. Big words for one man. He's not one man. The voice came from behind them. Clara turned to see Daniel's ranch hands emerging from the barn, the bunkhouse, the fields, all 12 of them, armed and grim-faced. More men appeared. Neighboring ranchers Daniel had helped over the years, drawn by the commotion. Within minutes, 30 armed men stood behind Daniel, a wall of loyalty and strength. Frank's face went pale. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Daniel's voice was cold. Tell Silas Garrett that Clara Ashford is under my protection now. Tell him if he sends anyone else, I'll consider it a declaration of war. And tell him Daniel Thornwood doesn't lose wars. Frank left, but his parting look promised violence. That night, Clara couldn't stop shaking. Daniel held her in front of the fire, his arms wrapped tightly around her. He'll come back, she whispered. He'll bring more men. I should leave, before someone gets hurt because of me. No. Daniel turned her to face him. You're not running. We're not running. This ranch has survived droughts, blizzards, and raids. It'll survive, Silas Garrett. You could die. I'll die before I let him hurt you. The ferocity in his voice made her chest tighten. Clara, look at me. I love you. I've loved you since that first night, when you sat on those steps with nothing left but refused to break. You're the strongest person I know, and I'll be damned if I let some small-minded, cruel man take you away. You love me? Clara's voice cracked. More than breathing. He cupped her face, his thumbs wiping away tears. I know it's fast. I know we've only had these few months. But out here, we don't waste time. Life's too short, too hard. When you find something worth keeping, you hold on. Clara kissed him, pouring everything she felt into that kiss. Her fear, her hope, her love. I love you too, she whispered against his lips. I'm terrified, but I love you. Then we face this together. The attack came 3 days later, at dawn. 20 men rode onto Thornwood Ranch, guns blazing, setting fire to the barn. But Daniel had prepared. He'd sent for the marshal, fortified the ranch, and positioned his men strategically. The battle was fierce but short. When the smoke cleared, Frank Garrett and his men were in custody, and Silas Garrett was wanted for attempted murder and extortion. But the victory came with a cost. Daniel took a bullet to the shoulder, and another grazed his side. Clara found him being carried to the house, blood soaking through his shirt, and her world tilted sickeningly. No, 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 she chanted, helping lay him on the dining table. Don't you dare die on me, Daniel Thornwood. Not planning on it, he gritted out through the pain. But you might want to fetch the doctor this time. Clara worked on his wounds with shaking hands, cleaning, stitching, binding while they waited for the doctor. Blood soaked her dress, her hands, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. If she stopped, if she thought about how close she'd come to losing him, she would shatter. I can't breathe, she whispered, the panic from that first night returning. Daniel, I can't. His hand found hers, gripping tight despite his pain. Breathe through me, darling, he said, his voice weak but steady. You're stronger than you think. Remember? She did remember. She forced air into her lungs, matching his breathing, finding strength in his presence even as he lay wounded. You can't leave me, she said fiercely. Not now. Not ever. Never, he promised. You're stuck with me. Daniel healed slowly, stubbornly, refusing to rest despite doctor's orders. A week after the attack, he insisted on walking Clara out to the eastern pasture, where wildflowers bloomed in wild profusion. "I've been thinking," he said, his arm around her waist as they walked. "This ranch needs a name." "It has a name. Thornwood Ranch." "Our ranch needs a name." He stopped, turning to face her. "Clara, I'm not good with pretty words or romantic gestures. I'm just a man who knows what he wants and isn't afraid to fight for it. And I want you, not as my cook or my housekeeper, or even just as the woman I love. I want you as my wife, my partner, my equal in everything. Will you marry me?" Clara's breath caught. "Daniel, I know it's fast. I know we've been through hell. But that's exactly why I'm asking. Life out here is hard and short and brutal, and I don't want to waste another day not being married to you. So what do you say, Clara Ashford? Will you take a chance on a stubborn rancher with more scars than sense?" "Yes," Clara whispered, then louder. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." Daniel kissed her there, among the wildflowers, and Clara felt the last of her fear melt away. She'd been running for so long, surviving, enduring. Now she could finally live. They married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the ranch, with the hands as witnesses and the local preacher officiating. Clara wore a simple blue dress she'd made herself, and Daniel wore his best suit, looking uncomfortable, but happy. When he slipped his grandmother's ring onto her finger, a simple gold band with a small diamond, Clara's eyes filled with tears. "You're not property," Daniel said softly, repeating the vow he'd already shown her 100 times. "You're a person, my person, if you'll have me. And I swear I'll spend every day proving you made the right choice." "I know I did," Clara replied, "because you see me. Not what I can do for you, not what you can take from me. Just me. I see a woman worth saving," he said. "Worth fighting for, worth keeping, now and always." The years that followed weren't easy. Ranching never was. There were hard winters, dry summers, cattle lost to disease, and constant work from dawn to dusk. But Clara and Daniel faced it all together, building not just a ranch, but a life. They added onto the house, creating space for the family they hoped to have. Clara's kitchen became famous throughout the territory, and she started taking in women who needed help the way she once had, giving them work and refuge and a chance to rebuild. Daniel expanded the ranch, buying neighboring land, improving the herd. But he never forgot where he came from, never lost his compassion for those struggling to survive. Together, they built something that lasted, something meaningful. On their 5th anniversary, Daniel found Clara on the porch at sunset, watching the land they'd built together. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her head. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Staying here? Marrying me?" Clara laced her fingers through his. "Never. This is where I belong, with you." "I love you," he murmured, "more now than the day I married you." "Same," Clara said, leaning back against him. "You saved my life that night, you know? In every way that matters." "No," Daniel corrected gently. "I just gave you the opportunity to save yourself. You did the hard part. You chose to live, to fight, to love. That was all you." Clara turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd seen her at her lowest and loved her anyway. "We did it together," she said. "That's the secret, isn't it? Together, we're stronger than we ever could be alone." "Together," Daniel agreed, and kissed her as the sun set over Thornwood Ranch, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, a promise of another day, another chance, another moment to build the life they'd fought so hard to create. The telegram arrived on a Tuesday morning in late spring, 6 years after Clara and Daniel had married. She was in the garden, tending to the vegetables she'd planted, when one of the hands came running from town. "Mrs. Thornwood." "Telegram for the boss." Clara wiped her hands on her apron and took the envelope, her heart sinking at the formal appearance. Telegrams rarely brought good news. She found Daniel in the barn, examining a pregnant mare. "This just came," she said, handing it to him. Daniel's expression darkened as he read. "It's from Boston. My father's dead." Clara waited, knowing there was more. "He left everything to me. The house, the business, all of it. His lawyer wants me to come handle the estate." He crumpled the telegram in his fist. "I never wanted anything from him." "What do you want to do?" Clara asked softly. Daniel looked at her, then at the ranch spread out around them. "I want to stay here. This is my home. But," he sighed, "there are legal matters. Things I can't ignore. I'll have to go to Boston, at least for a few weeks." "Then we'll go together," Clara said firmly. "Clara, it's a long journey. And Boston, it's not like here. It's crowded, noisy. You won't like it." She took his hand. "Together, remember? That's what we promised. Besides, I've never been further east than Denver. It might be an adventure." Daniel pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "What did I do to deserve you?" "You saw me when I was invisible," Clara whispered. "You gave me a home when I had nothing. You loved me when I didn't know how to love myself." They left for Boston 2 weeks later, leaving the ranch in the capable hands of their foreman, Miguel. The train journey was long and exhausting, but Clara found herself fascinated by the changing landscape, from the wide-open spaces of Montana to the rolling hills of the Midwest to the dense forests of the East. Boston itself was overwhelming. The noise, the crowds, the endless buildings pressing against each other. It made Clara's chest tighten with anxiety. But Daniel's hand stayed firm in hers as they navigated the unfamiliar streets. The Thornwood Mansion sat in Beacon Hill, a massive brick structure that spoke of old money and older traditions. Clara felt small standing before it, acutely aware of her simple traveling dress and worn boots. "This is where you grew up?" she asked. "This is where I survived," Daniel corrected grimly. "It was never a home." The lawyer, a thin man named Pemberton, met them at the door. His eyes swept over Clara with barely concealed disdain, taking in her Western clothes and sun-bronzed skin. "Mr. Thornwood, I'm pleased you could come. And this is my wife, Clara Thornwood." Daniel's voice held a warning edge. "She'll be involved in all discussions regarding the estate." Pemberton's eyebrows rose. "Of course, though I should warn you, Boston society can be rather particular about such matters." "I don't care about Boston society," Daniel said flatly. "Show us the papers." The estate was massive, worth more than Clara could comprehend. The house alone was valued at a sum that would buy 100 ranches like Thornwood. There were investments, properties, business holdings. It was a fortune. "Your father's will was very specific," Pemberton explained. "Everything comes to you, with one condition. You must live in Boston for at least 6 months of every year and take over management of the family business. If you refuse, everything goes to charity." Daniel's jaw tightened. "He's still trying to control me from the grave." "What kind of business?" Clara asked. "Banking and investment. The Thornwood Bank has been a Boston institution for 3 generations." Pemberton pushed forward more papers. "Your father built it into one of the most powerful financial institutions in New England." That night, in the cold, formal bedroom of the Thornwood mansion, Daniel paced like a caged animal. Clara sat on the edge of the massive four-poster bed, watching him. "He knew I'd hate this," Daniel said. "He knew I built a life out west, and he's trying to drag me back into his world. Even dead, he won't let me go." "What do you want to do?" Clara asked. Daniel stopped pacing. "I want to go home. I want to wake up in our bed and see the mountains through the window. I want to hear the cattle and smell sagebrush and feel like I can breathe." He sat beside her, taking her hands. "But this money, it could change everything. We could expand the ranch, buy more land, hire more hands. We could help more people, do more good. Or we could stay here for 6 months every year and slowly suffocate," Clara said gently. "Daniel, we don't need his money. We've built a good life without it. But think of what we could do with it. The women you help, we could build them a real shelter, give them real resources. We could lose ourselves trying to meet a dead man's conditions," Clara interrupted. "Is that what you want? To spend half your life in a place you hate, doing work you don't believe in, just because your father left you money?" Daniel closed his eyes. "No, but walking away from this much money feels wrong, wasteful." Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What if there's another way?" Over the next 3 days, Clara and Daniel met with Pemberton and other lawyers, crafting a solution that would honor the letter of Daniel's father's will while preserving their life in Montana. They would spend 6 months in Boston, but not continuously. They'd come east for 3 months in winter, when ranch work was lighter, and 3 months in late summer after the cattle drives. During those months, Daniel would oversee the bank's major decisions and investments, but he'd hire a competent manager to handle day-to-day operations. And he'd use the bank's resources to fund causes they believed in, helping struggling ranchers, supporting women's shelters, investing in sustainable agriculture. "It's not perfect," Daniel admitted as they prepared to return to Montana. "But it lets us keep our life while doing some good with his money." "It's a compromise," Clara agreed. "And sometimes compromise is the strongest choice we can make." The journey back to Montana felt like coming up for air after being underwater. As the train carried them west and the landscape opened up, Clara felt the tension leave Daniel's shoulders. By the time they reached Redemption Creek, he was almost smiling. The ranch looked beautiful in the summer sun, the grass green and lush, cattle dotting the hills. The hands had maintained everything perfectly, and Miguel met them at the house with a full report. "It's good to be home," Daniel said, pulling Clara close on the porch. "I never want to leave again." "We'll have to," Clara reminded him gently. "In a few months, we'll need to go back to Boston." "I know, but this," he gestured to the land spread before them, "this is real. Boston is just something we have to do." That night, lying in their own bed with the window open and the sound of crickets filling the air, Daniel made love to Clara with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. Afterward, she lay with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I was so afraid in Boston," she confessed. "Afraid that city would swallow you up, that you'd remember what it was like to have money and power and decide the ranch wasn't enough." Daniel's arms tightened around her. "The ranch is everything. You're everything. Boston has money, but we have this, us, our land, our life. That's worth more than all the gold in the world. Promise me something," Clara whispered. "Anything. Promise me that no matter what happens, no matter how much money we have or how many months we spend in Boston, we'll never forget who we are. We're ranch people, Daniel. We belong to this land. I promise, he said, sealing it with a kiss. We belong here, together. The autumn brought unexpected complications. Clara discovered she was pregnant, and the joy of that discovery was tempered by the knowledge that they'd need to travel to Boston in a few months. The doctor advised against such a long journey in her condition, but the terms of the will were clear. 6 months in Boston or forfeit everything. Daniel was ready to walk away from it all. I don't care about the money, he said fiercely. Not if it means risking you or the baby. But Clara had grown up poor, had known true hunger and desperation. The thought of using the Thornwood fortune to help other women in similar situations drove her to take the risk. We'll be careful, she insisted. We'll travel slowly, stop frequently, and Boston has excellent doctors. The journey east that winter was grueling. Clara, 5 months pregnant, found the train ride exhausting. Every bump and sway made her nauseous, and by the time they reached Boston, she was pale and weak. The Boston doctors examined her and declared her condition precarious. The baby was healthy, but Clara needed bed rest for the remainder of her pregnancy. She couldn't return to Montana until after the birth. Daniel was beside himself with worry and guilt. This is my fault, he said, pacing their bedroom while Clara rested. I should have refused the inheritance. I should have... You should stop blaming yourself, Clara said firmly. I chose this. We chose this together. Now we need to make the best of it. The winter months in Boston were the hardest of Clara's life. Confined to bed, surrounded by the cold formality of the Thornwood mansion, she longed for Montana with a physical ache. She missed the ranch, the space, the simple honesty of Western life. But Daniel never left her side. He conducted business from their bedroom, brought her books and newspapers, sat with her for hours, telling stories about the ranch and their plans for the future. And slowly, grudgingly, Clara came to see another side of Boston. The charitable organizations Daniel supported, the struggling families the bank helped, the good work being done with Thornwood money. One afternoon, a young woman appeared at the mansion, seeking employment. She was thin, bruised, and clearly running from something. The housekeeper tried to turn her away, but Clara heard the commotion from her room. Send her up, Clara called. The woman, Sarah, was 19 and had fled from a violent husband in New York. She had no money, no references, and nowhere to go. She reminded Clara of herself 6 years earlier, desperate and afraid. You'll work here, Clara said simply. Room, board, and wages. And if your husband comes looking, he'll find more trouble than he bargained for. Sarah burst into tears. Why would you help me? You don't know me. Because someone helped me once, Clara said, and that changed everything. Over the next few weeks, Sarah proved herself invaluable. She helped care for Clara, ran the household with quiet efficiency, and slowly began to heal from her trauma. And Clara realized that perhaps there was good work to be done in Boston, too, helping women who couldn't escape to Montana, who needed refuge in the city. The baby came early, on a snowy March night. The labor was long and difficult, and there was a moment when the doctor's face went grave and Daniel's hand crushed Clara's with fear. I can't breathe, Clara gasped, the pain overwhelming. Daniel, I can't. He leaned close, his face pale but determined. Breathe through me, darling, he whispered. You're stronger than you think. You can do this. We can do this. Together. And she did. At dawn, as the snow stopped falling, Clara gave birth to a healthy baby girl with her mother's dark eyes and her father's determination. They named her Rose, for the wild roses that grew on the Montana plains. Daniel held his daughter with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Clara, she's perfect." "She's ours," Clara said, exhausted but radiant. "Our little wild Rose." Spring came to Boston, but Clara's heart remained in Montana. As soon as the doctor cleared her for travel, they made plans to return west. But before they left, Clara established the Rose House, a shelter for women fleeing violence, named for their daughter and funded by Thornwood money. "We'll come back every year," Clara told Sarah, who would manage the shelter. "And you'll write me with updates." "This is important work, Sarah. You're saving lives." "You saved mine first," Sarah said, embracing Clara. "I'll make you proud." The journey back to Montana was slower, with stops to rest and care for baby Rose. But every mile west felt like coming back to life. When they finally crested the hill overlooking Thornwood Ranch, Clara burst into tears. "We're home," she whispered. "Rose, this is your home." The years that followed found a rhythm. They spent winters in Boston, where Daniel managed the bank, and Clara expanded her charitable work. But spring through fall belonged to Montana, to the ranch, the land, the life they'd built with their own hands. Rose grew up splitting her time between two worlds. In Boston, she learned literature, music, and social graces. In Montana, her father taught her to ride, rope, and run a ranch. She was equally comfortable in a ball gown and riding leathers, a child of both worlds, but belonging fully to neither. When Rose was 5, Clara gave birth to twin boys, James and Thomas. The twins were pure cowboys from birth, happiest covered in dirt and chasing cattle. Daniel's face when he held his sons for the first time was something Clara would never forget. Pure joy mixed with fierce protectiveness. "3 children," Daniel said, watching them play in the yard one summer evening. "Can you believe it? Sometimes I think about that night I found you in Redemption Creek, and I can't believe this is my life now." "Our life," Clara corrected. Leaning against him, "We built this together." The ranch prospered. With Thornwood money backing their expansion, they bought neighboring properties, improved their herd, and employed nearly 50 people. But they never forgot their roots, never lost sight of why they were doing this work. Every woman who came to them desperate and afraid found help. Every struggling rancher who needed a loan got fair terms. Every child who wanted to learn ranching found a teacher. Thornwood Ranch became known throughout Montana as a place of opportunity and second chances. But not everyone was happy with their success. In the spring of Rose's 8th year, trouble returned to Thornwood Ranch in the form of Jacob Blackwood, a railroad magnate who wanted their land for a new rail line. He offered to buy them out, a generous offer by any standard, but Daniel refused. "This land isn't for sale," he said simply. Blackwood didn't take rejection well. Over the next few months, strange things began happening. Fences cut, cattle stampeded, equipment destroyed. It was sabotage, clear and systematic, designed to make running the ranch impossible. Daniel knew it was Blackwood, but couldn't prove it. A local law was understaffed and overwhelmed, so Daniel did what he'd always done. He gathered his people and prepared to defend what was theirs. But Clara had learned things in Boston, including how to fight battles with paper instead of guns. She began investigating Blackwood's business dealings, using connections she'd made through the bank. What she discovered was explosive. Blackwood had been bribing officials, falsifying land surveys, and using intimidation tactics across Montana territory. "We take this to the territorial governor," Clara said, spreading the evidence across their dining table. "Blackwood's broken federal law. This goes beyond us now." Daniel looked at his wife with undisguised admiration. "You're brilliant." "I'm thorough," Clara corrected. "There's a difference." They traveled to Helena with their evidence. The governor, who knew Daniel's reputation and respected the Thornwood name, listened carefully. Within weeks, Blackwood was under investigation. The harassment stopped immediately, but Blackwood had one final play. He hired men to attack the ranch while Daniel and Clara were in Helena. The goal was to kidnap Rose and use her as leverage. They didn't count on 8-year-old Rose being her father's daughter. When the men broke into the main house, Rose grabbed her father's rifle, the one he'd taught her to shoot despite Clara's protests, and barricaded herself in the pantry with her younger brothers. Miguel and the ranch hands heard the gunfire and came running. The fight was brief but brutal. By the time Daniel and Clara returned, riding hard from Helena, it was over. Rose sat on the porch steps, the rifle across her knees, her face pale but set. "I protected James and Thomas," she said simply. "Like you would have, Papa." Daniel swept her into his arms, and Clara saw tears on his face, fear, pride, and love all mixed together. "You did perfect, Rose. Perfect." That night, after the children were finally asleep and the authorities had taken statements, Clara and Daniel sat on their porch, watching the stars. "She could have been killed," Clara whispered. "All of them could have been killed. But they weren't." Daniel pulled her close. "Because our daughter is strong and brave and smart. Because we've taught her to fight for what's hers. Because we've built something worth defending." "Is it worth this?" Clara asked. "Worth the danger, the fear?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Remember that first night? When I found you on those steps, ready to give up everything just to survive another day? I remember. You asked me why I'd help you, and I said I saw a woman worth saving." He turned her to face him. "I still see her, Clara. But now I also see a woman who saves others, who built a shelter in Boston and a refuge here, who raised children to be strong and kind and brave, who turned blood money into something good." "We did that together," Clara said. "Exactly. Together." He kissed her forehead. "So yes, it's worth the danger. It's worth the fear. Because what we're building here, this ranch, this family, this life, it's bigger than us. It's hope for people who have none. It's proof that second chances exist. It's everything we almost didn't have." Clara leaned into him, listening to his heartbeat, and knew he was right. The life they'd built wasn't easy or safe, but it was real. It was theirs. And it was worth every struggle, every fight, every moment of fear. Because they'd faced it all together. The telegram came from Boston when Rose was 16, the twins were 11, and Clara was 42 years old. She was in the kitchen, teaching Rose how to make her grandmother's biscuit recipe, when Daniel came in holding the paper. "There's been an accident," he said quietly. "The Rose house caught fire. Sarah's in the hospital." Clara's hands stilled on the dough. "How bad?" "Bad enough that they're asking us to come." Daniel's face was grave. She tried to get everyone out. She saved 12 women and their children before the ceiling collapsed. They left for Boston that afternoon, leaving the ranch in the hands of their oldest son James, who at 11 showed a maturity beyond his years. Rose insisted on coming with them, and Daniel didn't have the heart to refuse. The Rose house was gone, nothing but charred beams and ash. But the women Sarah had saved stood in the street, holding their children, alive because one woman had been brave enough to run back into the flames. At the hospital, they found Sarah in a private room, her face and hands bandaged, breathing labored. The doctors said she'd survive, but her burns were severe. She'd never look the same. Clara sat beside her bed, holding Sarah's bandaged hand gently. "You saved them all." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I thought about you," she whispered, her voice rough from smoke. "About how you saved me, and I knew I had to save them. I couldn't breathe, Mrs. Thornwood. The smoke was so thick, and I was so scared. But then, I remembered what you told me about Mr. Thornwood finding you that night, how he helped you breathe, and I thought if Clara can survive what she survived, I can do this." "You're a hero," Rose said from the doorway. "My mother helps people. But you walked into fire for them." "Your mother walked into fire for me," Sarah said. "She just did it with kindness instead of courage." Over the next weeks, as Sarah healed and plans were made to rebuild the Rose house, Clara realized how far the ripples of that one night in Redemption Creek had spread. She'd saved Sarah, and Sarah had saved 12 more women, who would go on to save others in turn. It was an endless chain of second chances, all starting from the moment Daniel had knelt before her on those steps and taught her how to breathe again. They returned to Montana in late summer, but something had changed. Rose, who'd been content with the ranch, now wanted to study medicine. "I want to help people like you do, Mama, like Papa does. But I want to do it with skill, not just kindness." Daniel, who'd always assumed his daughter would run the ranch after him, struggled with this new direction. But Clara understood. "She's finding her own way to save people," Clara told him, "just like we did." "She's so young," Daniel protested. "The world is hard for women in medicine." "The world was hard for a desperate widow trying to survive in Redemption Creek," Clara reminded him. "But she survived anyway. Rose has our strength, Daniel. Let her use it." So they sent Rose east to study. And Clara felt the bittersweet ache of watching your child become who they're meant to be. The twins would run the ranch. That was clear from the way they took to the work, the land, the life. But Rose would save people in a different way. Years passed. The children grew. The ranch prospered. Clara's hair turned silver, and Daniel's face gained new lines. But they still stood on their porch each evening, watching the sunset. Still held each other through Montana's brutal winters. Still built their life together day by day. When Clara was 50, she fell ill. It started as a cough. Fitting, somehow, that it would be her lungs again. But this cough didn't go away. The doctors in Boston had no answers. She was simply wearing out, they said gently. A hard life, hard work, the toll of bearing children and building an empire. Daniel refused to accept it. He brought in specialists from San Francisco, from Chicago, from New York. But they all said the same thing. Clara's body was tired. She had maybe a year, maybe less. Rose came home, a newly certified doctor, and confirmed what Clara already knew. She was dying. "I'm not afraid," Clara told Daniel one night as he held her. "I've lived more than I ever dreamed possible. I've loved and been loved. I've helped people. I've raised strong children. That's more than enough." "It's not enough for me," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "I can't lose you, Clara. You're my breath. Without you, I can't breathe. Clara cupped his face, seeing the fear there, the grief already taking hold. Then breathe through me, darling, she whispered. You're stronger than you think. Remember? That's what you taught me. That's what we've taught our children. That's what we've taught everyone who's ever come to this ranch looking for hope. I can't do this without you. You won't have to. I'll always be here. She touched his chest over his heart. Here, in the land we built, in our children, in every person we've helped who's gone on to help others. I'm not going anywhere, Daniel. I'm just changing form. Clara lived through that winter and into spring, long enough to see Rose hang her medical shingle in Redemption Creek, opening a practice that would serve the community for decades. Long enough to see James and Thomas take over the ranch completely, running it with the same integrity their parents had shown. Long enough to meet her first grandchild, Rose's daughter, named Clara Rose Thornwood. On a warm May morning, with wildflowers blooming across the Montana plains, Clara died in the bed she'd shared with Daniel for 32 years. He was holding her hand, and her last words were simple. Together. Together, Daniel promised through his tears. Always together. The funeral was the largest Redemption Creek had ever seen. Women came from the Rose House in Boston, from the shelter Clara had started in Helena, from a dozen other places where she'd offered help. They came to say goodbye to a woman who'd seen them when they were invisible, who'd given them hope when they had none. Daniel stood by her grave and spoke simply. Clara Ashford came to this town with nothing but a locket and desperation. I found her ready to give up everything just to survive another day. But she wasn't weak. She was the strongest person I ever knew. She just needed someone to remind her. So I did, and in return, she taught me everything worth knowing about love, about courage, about building something that lasts. This ranch, this family, this community, it's all her legacy, and it will endure because she showed us how. He lived 7 more years, running the ranch, watching his grandchildren grow, carrying on the work he and Clara had started. But everyone who knew him said he was only half present, that the light had gone out of his eyes when Clara died. On a cold December night, Daniel Thornwood died peacefully in his sleep. His last words, recorded by Rose, who sat with him. I can breathe again, darling. I can finally breathe. They buried him next to Clara, under the wild roses she'd loved. And on the stone they placed a simple inscription. Daniel and Clara Thornwood, together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Clara and Daniel's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.